Bradley, how in the hell are you going to rank Garrett Wilson at 19, considering his situation going from Trevor Siemian, who is barely a capable NFL quarterback, and Zach Wilson to Aaron Rodgers in this upcoming year? How the hell are you going to rank him at 19?
Sometimes I wonder that myself, Jake, but let's be honest. Garrett Wilson, he was not very good last year in terms of his play himself. Like, he earned targets, yes, but his yards per route run 54th among wide receivers, 51st against in formation adjusted yards per route run, yards per target 87th among wide receivers. Now you're like, but Bradley, he earned so many targets. Who else is Trevor Siemian? Who else is Zach Wilson going to throw to? It's not Alan Lazard, right? It's not Randall Cobb. It's going to be Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is good. That's why I have him ranked at 19th. But Garrett Wilson was so bad last year for fantasy. He was wide receiver 47 in terms of best ball value rating. It was an absolute disaster. And we were drafting him at the 1-2 turn. So at 12th overall, and his expert consensus ranking right now on Fantasy Pros is at wide receiver 7. And overall, he's being drafted or selected or ranked. Oh my gosh, I have to keep scrolling down. He's getting at pick 14. So at that 1-2 turn yet again. My concerns are that, have we learned nothing from this past season? There are other factors with the Jets that don't just involve Aaron Rodgers, although Rodgers is turning 40 or is already 40. He's coming off of a season-ending injury, which, yes, he may have miraculously made his way back, but how realistic is it that Aaron Rodgers comes back to MVP form? I think there is a scary floor for Aaron Rodgers for 2024, not only because of his own play of falling off the cliff, of not playing for a full year, but also because of the Jets' offensive line, which was one of the worst in the NFL. And so my concern is that Garrett Wilson, while I don't think he'll be wide receiver 47 for best ball or for any other ranking, I think it's going to be hard for him to return wide receiver 7, given how the Jets are set up. And there's a non-0% chance that Davante Adams gets traded to the Jets this offseason. Garrett Wilson even changed his number in the last week to his old number, which is, and Davante Adams has the Garrett Wilson old number. Davante Adams' number is now available on the Jets. So, Jake, I think there are just multiple pathways for Garrett Wilson to fail, and there's only one pathway for him to succeed, and that is assuming that he's going to be Davante Adams 2.0 for an MVP caliber Aaron Rodgers. And I want to warn people, we've seen this before. Garrett Wilson can earn targets. He can earn he plays the wide receiver position very well, but the situation is tough. It's hard to believe in Aaron Rodgers going into 40, and there's so much pressure that we've seen the Jets just collapse time and again. So I am wary organizationally and situationally about Garrett Wilson. I have him outside of my top 15 of wide receivers right now.
Yeah, but I think we got to take situation into account for last year as well. We want to sit here and talk about stats. He was wide receiver number 76 in target accuracy at 6.4 per game. We look at what his expected fantasy points were compared to what his actual fantasy points were per game. We're looking at 20.2, which is what his expected points for were, compared to 12.8. Just doing some rough math there. If you take a look at how he was supposed to play and where he was supposed to be, I don't think wide receiver 19 is a fair number for him at all. I think it should be higher around that 10, 11, 12 mark. But he was number 3 in air yard share at 42.7%. He was number 10 overall among all wide receivers in deep targets. He was number 9 in red zone targets. He was number 48 in target quality. That just shows you that the opportunity in his floor was so much worse this past year than what it's going to be with improved quarterback play, improved line play, having the ability to have another receiver come in and not force teams to double team him because he's the only receiver who's worth a damn on the Jets. So I think you're not factoring in A, his situation getting better, but B, just how talented this player is.
Oh, he was wide receiver 6 in terms of expected fantasy points, but if you are drafting him at wide receiver 6, wide receiver 7, you're assuming that he's going to get all the way back to what was expected of him, and he's earning wide receiver 1, mid-pack wide receiver 1 target share, but that did not translate. Now let's look at...
No, hold on. I didn't say he was wide receiver 6, so I'm not expecting all the way back up to wide receiver 6.
But that's where he's being mocked and drafted, and that's where he's going right now. And so my philosophy is, if the public is missing something so significantly, I want to make sure the people who are listening and viewing and watching are out on that type of player, where he, like, how much more of a ceiling can he access from not a fantasy point side, but from an expected fantasy point side. Let's look at Davante Adams from 2 years ago when he was with the Green Bay Packers for the Aaron Rodgers MVP season. So Davante Adams, he was the lead wide receiver, obviously in his prime at that point. He was number 3 in expected fantasy points per game that year. He only exceeded his expected fantasy points by less than 2, and it was at 19.6. This was lower than in Aaron Rodgers led team. His expected fantasy points were lower than Garrett Wilson. And so my concerns are that it would take not only an Aaron Rodgers MVP level season, but you'd also need to see efficiency. You would need a perfect storm for Garrett Wilson to pay off that round 1 draft capital in terms of ranking, in terms of where he would be going in these way too early drafts. And I just want to caution people, like, the Jets offense is not great. Like, we love Breece Hall and we love Garrett Wilson. And I think those are the only pieces of this offense that we're in on. And
I don't know if I can fade Conk Daddy anymore. He's always going to be the guy.
I love Tyler Conklin. I stay up late at night watching Tyler Conklin film. My wife is like, "What are you up so late for watching?" And I'm like, "Tyler Conklin film." Even Billy caught me late one night. He's like, "Bradley, what are you doing up?" And I'm like, "I'm watching Tyler Conklin film." I got caught with a mistress. This is terrible.
Jake from State Farm commercial.
Are you wearing any pants? Oh, so you were watching Tyler Conklin? Did he have pants on? But at any rate, I do Conklin. He earned a lot of targets, but they were like useless targets in this offense. And so there's a pathway for possibly Adams to join. Maybe there's been some rumblings in the Jets organization about Brock Bowers, the generational tight end, being drafted by the Jets early on. So I just think that it would have to take an MVP season again from Aaron Rodgers at age 40, coming off of, a lost season. That's not something I'm willing to bet on.
Yeah, hard to argue with that. I do think that he is being ranked a little bit above where he should be. I personally have him at wide receiver 10. I think there are some other guys that you have ranked that are around that same area that are maybe should be a little higher or a little bit lower. But anyway, I do think that Garrett Wilson is being drafted ahead of where he should be, but I don't think he falls down below to wide receiver 19 in a mid-tier wide receiver 2 like you have him.
All right. Jake believes Garrett Wilson not a wide receiver 2. I believe that Garrett Wilson is a wide receiver 2 at this point. All right, Jake, let's move into round 1. And at least among the top 10 of wide receivers, the biggest deviation I have from the consensus is DJ Moore. And Moore I have as my wide receiver 6. He is overall my 10th player, but he's in tier 4. So he's still behind the Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyron Williams, Amon-Ra level. Like, I'm not getting carried away there, but I think he is in the same tier as Puka and AJ Brown and ahead of Brandon Ayuk. I think that there's just a lot of pathways for DJ Moore to not only be successful and repeat what he did in 2023, but to elevate to the next level, either with Justin Fields staying healthy for the whole season, or if the Bears decide to go the Caleb Williams route, there's going to be more pass attempts in this offense. So I am big in on DJ Moore. His ranking overall, based on the consensus, is at 16. So mid-pack second round pick, and 9th overall. I have him at 6. Jake, what is your take on DJ Moore going into the 2024 season?
Yeah, I think that a lot of your similar concerns with Garrett Wilson are also valid for DJ Moore. The quarterback situation is a little bit up in flux, whether it's going to be Caleb Williams, whether it's going to be Justin Fields. If it is Caleb Williams, okay, then we have to worry about a rookie quarterback coming in. How quick of a start is he going to be able to get off to in terms of reading NFL coverages, reading NFL defenses, compared to being in the Pac-12 where they don't take defense as seriously? You're looking at a lot higher scoring games in the Pac-12. There is a little bit of concern there. And also, if it's Justin Fields, are they looking at a full healthy season for Justin Fields, which is always something you have to worry about when you have a rushing mobile quarterback like he is. And also, B, what else are they going to do on that offensive front? Because they realized that they weren't good enough on offense this year. Are they going to add a piece to the wide receiver core? Is that going to eat up into his target share as well? Similarly to Wilson, if the Jets bring in Devontae Adams, who are the Bears going to bring in? Are they going to bring in a guy like T. Higgins? Are they going to bring in another free agent or draft someone, maybe trade back a pick or two, take a Marvin Harrison Jr. sort of player? So are they going to go that route? There's a lot of question marks around DJ Moore right now in that entire Bears offense that I don't think I would be willing to spend first round draft capital on him. I personally like a guy that you mentioned and had him actually in a tier below. I like Brandon Ayuk a little bit more than I personally like DJ Moore. I think there's a clearer path. Deebo Samuel does have an opt-out clause in his contract for after this season. So if Deebo leaves, he's still there. He's going to be the guy, and I think there's a lot of upside with Brandon Ayuk.
Oh, I love Brandon Ayuk too. I think that he's I think Brandon Ayuk, even though he's ranked higher than Tyler Lockett ever was, he's like Tyler Lockett in that he seems always perpetually undervalued or forgotten about, because there are so many great fantasy options on the San Francisco 49ers. But to your point about the difference between DJ Moore and a player like Garrett Wilson, the quarterback question is a legitimate one, but DJ Moore last year was wide receiver 4 in terms of rate of top 5 weeks, and he was wide receiver 10 in terms of best ball value rating. Compare that to Garrett Wilson, who 0% of the weeks was top 5 or top 10, and he was wide receiver 47 in terms of best ball value rating. So you've got a guy who, yes, a better quarterback play. Justin Fields is certainly better than Zach Wilson, better than Trevor Siemian, but we saw DJ Moore just have these massive spike weeks with Justin Fields, and it could have been bigger because the weeks where Tyson Bagent was the quarterback, we didn't see those spike weeks. He was the wide receiver 50, wide receiver 56, wide receiver 48, blah, 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 blah. And so with atrocious quarterback play, yes, like DJ Moore falls into that Garrett Wilson type where he is commanding the targets. Like DJ Moore this year, 29% target share, which was 10th among wide receivers. He finished as wide receiver 9 in points per game. But I think there's some untapped upside given the bad weeks that happened in the middle of the season. And there's also an upside swing of maybe it's not Justin Fields, but at least we know what DJ Moore can do with Justin Fields as the starting quarterback. That's why I'm very bullish on him. And I want pieces of this. It can't be worse than what Luke Getsy was rolling out there as the offensive coordinator, right? Just a lot of dink and dunk, nothing. And if we remember, Justin Fields coming out of Ohio State was one of the most accurate downfield passers collegiately. Matt Nagy messed him up, and there are other coaching issues that
when in doubt, just blame Matt Nagy.
when in doubt, yes, blame Matt Nagy. But I think DJ Moore is one of those players, ultra talent. But I want pieces of this offense, especially if there's going to be a new upswing or a generational talent quarterback like Caleb Williams. We just saw CJ Stroud elevate Nico Collins and Tank Dell and any of those other wide receivers. Noah Brown went from irrelevant to Spike Week king. So we've definitely seen rookie quarterbacks upgrade their wide receivers. I love DJ Moore. I want to be drafting. If he's a mid-round 2 pick, I'm going to be drafting a lot of him in 2024.
Yeah, if you take a look at it, a lot of DJ Moore's production, it doesn't come down the field. He was wide receiver 30 in terms of target rate, and then he was also, I just had it pulled up here, wide receiver 16 in yards per route run. He didn't really dominate down the field, only 1.56 yards of separation on targets and everything. There is a potential to him being a top 12 wide receiver, but I don't see him as the wide receiver 6 like you have him.
Okay. And that's fair. That's why we have these ranking summits to go back and forth and debate about these wide receivers. Ryan jumping in the comments, Bajan unfortunately looked a lot better than Zach Wilson. Yes, there were moments where Bajan looked like a capable quarterback from time to time. Garrett gets a mulligan, but that's hard. It's hard to swallow that type of mulligan when you were burned so badly, and now he's being drafted virtually at the same exact spot, despite some of the warning signs. And I think it's going to take a lot for the Jets to adjust, because their defense is very good, which means they're probably not going to get into shootouts. They have 3 of the top 25 cornerbacks in the NFL, led by Sauce Gardner. And so you're not getting into shootouts. You've got a good defense. You've got a quarterback who is one of the slowest pace of play quarterbacks in NFL history. That was his calling card, Aaron Rodgers' calling card back when he was with the Packers. And now look, the Packers are like moving very quickly. The line, they've got so much motion. Like the only reason it's taking a long time for the Packers right now is because there's like Jaden Reed running around the backfield. But you've got a slow pace. You've got a good defense. The offensive line isn't very good for the Jets. They're going to have to address that. And so you're banking on big plays from Garrett Wilson and high volume. I am concerned that there's just too many pathways for Garrett Wilson to fail. So that's my justification for Garrett Wilson where he is.
I will say to Ryan's point that, I don't see the Jets being that incompetent. And I know that's asking a lot of the Jets because of their history to not address that backup quarterback situation moving forward into the upcoming year. I'd be very, very surprised if they don't make a pretty heavy move to solidify that quarterback room in the off chance that Aaron Rodgers does go down again with an injury.
It wouldn't surprise me if they draft a quarterback first round. Like real talk, like Aaron Rodgers is only guaranteed 2024 to the Jets. Like, I'm here for another year. I'm not going anywhere for this year. 2025 is not in the cards. And if the Jets win, then they've got a late pick by the time that Aaron Rodgers is probably going to retire. If the Jets lose, then they've got an early pick, but they've wasted this then. They've wasted an opportunity. So I think that they're going to do everything that they can to win, and that's going to drive their pick. They're going to be competitive in a lot of games with that defense. So I am concerned long-term. I wouldn't be surprised if they do try to draft a quarterback in the first round and Jordan Love this thing.
So the question then becomes, does Aaron Rodgers go complete Brett Favre? Cousins coming off that Achilles. They might sign him to a 1-year deal. bring Brett or Aaron Rodgers in 2025 to be their quarterback, and then we just have history repeating itself.
Oh my gosh, this would be too much. As Packers fans, we are seeped in the Packers history. Nevertheless, Ryan's asking, do you think it's going to be Jacoby Brissett as a backup or the rookies, Penix or Nix? I think Brissett makes sense. He played very well for the Browns last season in 2022 in the midst of the Deshaun Watson debacle. Penix, I think, is a little raw, and we would need an significantly improved offensive line for Penix to be an effective quarterback. It was clear that the Michigan front seven was putting him under pressure, and he was making a lot of hurried or rush throws, but he's also very accurate when he's got time in the pocket. So I like that. And then Bo Nix, I still need to dive a little bit further into, but I wonder if he's probably not going to get the elite quarterback draft capital for it to be immediately meaningful. So maybe you just sit Nix and you just say, it is Aaron Rodgers' job and we'll see. But you never know.
I wouldn't be surprised to see them try to trade back up into the second round and take a guy like Nix if he's still there around that early to mid second rounds here, and let him sit behind Rodgers for a year, because Nix is a little bit older. He is very accurate with the ball as well, so he fits what the Jets are trying to do on offense. So I think a lot of it's going to come down to whether or not Robert Saleh is going to be there after next year, or if he's hanging by a thread that kind of determines where they go with their draft class and whether or not they bring in a veteran like Brissett or take a rookie like Nix or Penix.
Yeah, if I'm calling it right now, Robert Saleh is not going to have a job in 2025 as a head coach for the Jets.
I think probably not, but I think that'll be a mistake. What he's done with that defense is phenomenal. I think he's actually a really, really good head coach. I just think that he made a terrible decision tying his future to Zach Wilson, and I think that'll cost him. But I think if he has solid quarterback play, he could be a very, very good head coach.
Imagine if Joe Flacco.
Imagine if they had a guy like Aaron Rodgers for a full season.
All right, we'll keep her moving with some of these rankings here. There's some oldies but goodies that I've not fallen off the cliff on quite yet. And at 11 or at 12, I have Stephon Diggs for this season. Keenan Allen in 2024, I have at 13. Both were players who started very, very strong. And then Allen dealt with the heel injury. Diggs disappeared. And part of us are like, what are we going to do? I don't know. This is scary. What's going on with these players? And Keenan Allen finished this year as the wide receiver 3 in terms of best ball value rating. So he was still 29% of his weeks. He was a top 5 wide receiver in terms of half point scoring, which is phenomenal. And so that is, I'm still in on Keenan Allen. We know Mike Williams. He's got one of the highest
games a year.
Yeah, for like 4 games, he's great, and then he gets injured. But then we fall down to Stephon Diggs, and Diggs is the wide receiver 17 this year in terms of best ball value rating. Maybe I am a little bit too high on Stephon Diggs, but who else is going to step up? It's not going to be Gabe Davis. It's not going to be Khalil Shakir. I know that Diggs, he is just streaky, though. We've seen this before in his career. He will have streaks of 7 games, 8 games, 9 games, etc., and just disappear. We've seen this almost every single season. It just depends, and everyone gets panicked. We saw it last year. We see it this year. It happens. Stephon Diggs, though, I think if you get him as a back end of the second round, I would have to pull up the overall rankings, but I have Diggs at wide receiver 12 in the rankings, and overall Diggs I have at 22. So yeah, back end of the second round at the 2-3 turn, I think is appropriate for that type of player. And then you're probably going to be able to get Diggs in round 2 and then come back around to Josh Allen in round 3. So you've got a round 1 pick, you've got the Buffalo stack. This is the way to go. And I think if Diggs is getting priced down even further because his expert consensus ranking is 31, like a mid 3rd round pick, I think that's falling too far for the wide receiver 1 for Buffalo.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing to keep in mind too is Gabe Davis is a free agent after this year. Are the Bills going to bring him back? Are they happy with what he's done? I personally don't think so, and I personally wouldn't be happy with what he's shown over the course of the last couple of seasons. How are they going to address that need, and what is it going to do to Stephon Diggs? I agree with you. I think that Stephon Diggs right around the 2-3 turn is the place to take him. That's where I would take him going into this offseason because you're right. He's still going to have those spike weeks. He's still going to have those games where he gets 12 targets, 8 receptions, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns, that sort of game, which gives you, especially in best ball, that upside. But I don't think he's going to be that wide receiver 1 production that we've seen in the past from him in terms of consistently a top 3 wide receiver where you are fighting to draft him.
Yeah, and this year, obviously, his lowest receiving yards since 2019. He had 160 targets. He's had 155 or more targets each of the last 4 seasons. But wide receiver 13 this year in fantasy points per game per player profiler. Number 9 in target share. 31 in yards per route run. Diggs, remember, just turned 30 years old. Very fast wide receiver. Maybe we've seen him take a step back, but he's 6 foot 195. He's not one of those big bodied wide receivers like a Mike Williams or back in the day, a Brandon Marshall that is just taking big hit after big hit. And so I think this is just a part of the ebbs and flows of the profile of this player. So again, like if that's where Diggs is going, you got to live with your lumps. But here's the dirty little secret, Jake, is that wide receivers tend to bust and at rates that you just need to be comfortable with. We look at Stephon Diggs as in terms, okay, we'll take a step back. The wide receiver, Diggs was wide receiver 12 in terms of rate of flex weeks. That is 12.5 points in PPR or more. He only did that 51% of the time, and he was a top 12 wide receiver. So essentially a coin flip. You're looking at a back end wide receiver 1, 50% of the time gives you at least a flex usable week. 50% of the time does not. It's a coin flip. That's a dirty little secret is half the time your top 12 wide receivers don't produce for you. So you just have to live with these lumps. Go down to wide receiver 24, Garrett Wilson, 36% of the time. And that's a top 24 wide receiver, only 36% of the time giving you a flex-worthy week. The dirty little secret is like floors can be zeros for a lot of these wide receivers, and you just need to live with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing to keep in mind too, and a question that'll certainly come up, I think, this offseason, is Stephon Diggs happy in Buffalo? Ooh. Is he going to stay in Buffalo going into next season? We heard rumblings all year about his relationship with Josh Allen. We heard that it might be strained. We heard it might not be perfect. So is he going to be able to stay in Buffalo where it gives him the best chance to succeed? As a round 2 pick, especially early in round 2, I'm not willing to take that shot. Mostly because I also abide to the Bill Belichick philosophy. I'd rather be a year too early on a player than too late. So I'd rather not get burned by Stephon Diggs one last time coming down the stretch where you really need him most.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere in 2024 unless he does some renegotiation because his dead cap hit for 2024 is $31 million.
That's it?
That's it. Yeah. In 2025, it's $22 million, which is possible that they get out of that one. So for his age 32 season, and then probably age 33, 34, he probably ends a bill outside of a diva spiral. He probably finishes as a Buffalo Bill.
Could be. Well, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised to see him renegotiate and be able to move on from there, go somewhere maybe a little bit more tropical, a little bit warmer, and retire into the sun.
Yeah, I don't think he longs to stay in the snows of Buffalo, New York for much longer, but we'll see. We'll see. But I think at the back end of the second round, beginning of the third round is a fine spot for Stefon Diggs, given what he disappointed last year as a back end first round, back end first round pick. But if that's the going rate for Stefon Diggs in 2024, give me some of that.
Absolutely.
We can also talk about, so we hit on Keenan Allen, we hit on Stefon Diggs. Oh man, we can talk about
one guy I think you have a little bit low is T. Higgins. You have him sitting here at wide receiver 22, puts him as a low end wide receiver 2. But again, the question becomes, is he staying in Cincinnati or is he moving on? We've seen him be wide receiver 15 in fantasy points per game for a number of his years over there in Cincinnati when he was playing behind Jamar Chase. I've heard him linked to the Bears. I've heard him linked to Carolina. So if he goes to Carolina, develops that chemistry with Bryce Young, I probably have him a little bit higher going into this year. I was very, very out on T. Higgins coming into this year, but I probably have him somewhere right around wide receiver 16 for this upcoming year.
Yeah, I think T. Higgins is a player that really disappointed in 2022, and I was also out on because he was not giving you the spike weeks that you were hoping to see. But in 2023, even though his floor bottomed out, 31% of the time T. Higgins gave you a flex week, which is pretty bad. We talked about Garrett Wilson being like 36% of the time. If only 3 out of 10 weeks, approximately, you're getting a flex-worthy play from T. Higgins, that's not going to work. And it's not going to justify you drafting him as a top 15, top 18 option. But T. Higgins this year, 7% of the time was a top 5 wide receiver in terms of weekly rate. That was wide receiver 25. And so he was able to get some of those spike weeks back, which was nice, but he finished as wide receiver 31 in terms of best ball value rating. So we did see him price him. I think he priced himself back into re-signing with the Cincinnati Bengals. Like we've seen that occur before, for instance, for Mike Williams. Mike Williams re-signed with the LA Chargers. That was an example of a player who didn't play great and then priced himself back into playing again for the team that drafted him. And I think if T. Higgins would have exploded, he would have priced himself out. And now that would be a much larger market. But I don't think there's going to be as strong of a market for T. Higgins as maybe we initially would have thought coming into this season, into 2023. So I'm a little concerned about T. Higgins. If he returns to Cincinnati, he's still going to peg. He's never going to be the 1B. He's always going to be the 2 to Jamar Chase. And so I'm not in on T. Higgins yet again, assuming that he's returning to Cincy.
I definitely think his value does take a little bit of a hit if he does stay in Cincinnati. I don't know if he wants to be in Cincinnati. You hear Jamar Chase talk about the situation too. That depends on how much I get. So I think their priority is to re-sign Jamar Chase and let T. Higgins take his shot at free agency, where I think a team like the Carolina Panthers will overpay him a little bit in order to secure him and get a wide receiver 1 for Bryce Young. So that's the vision that I see happening more with the T. Higgins path compared to him coming back and staying with the Bengals. But again, if he does re-sign, I do think it takes a little bit of a hit.
Yeah, if he let's play the Carolina Panthers game then. There's just so many pathways for failure for a Carolina team. We've seen Mingo not hit. We saw some spike weeks from Adam Thielen, which was nice, but Thielen he's one of those old crusty wide receivers as well. And we saw DJ Chark have a couple spike weeks. Obviously, I think T. Higgins would be the best of all of those. But one of the reasons why they failed was the offensive scheme. Who's going to be the head coach? Is Tepper going to step in again and maybe relieve the GM of the duty? There's a lot of questions that we have about Carolina. And if I'm T. Higgins, yes, I want the money, but I'm also coming from Cincinnati, where we've been competing for Super Bowls over the last couple of years. Yeah, they had a down year this past year because Joe Burrow injured, blah, blah, blah. But if I'm T. Higgins, I'm still trying to compete for Super Bowls at this point and looking for, I'll sign with the Chiefs. I'll sign with the Bills. I'll sign with some.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If he goes to the Chiefs and signs with the Chiefs, you think that makes the situation better or worse?
I think that's better. I think we move him up. I think I do move him up if he goes to the Chiefs. I think that he would not push. I don't think he would be the wide receiver one. I still think Rashee Rice would be the 1A and 1B with T. Higgins. At least they would be side by side. I don't think that one would be, it would alternate essentially. Like, we know that Jamar Chase is the one. I don't think it would be clear who would be the one if it's T. Higgins or Rashee Rice if it's Kansas City.
So then why do you have Rashee Rice 9 spots lower in your rankings compared to T. Higgins?
The reason why I'm lower on Rashee Rice is it's twofold. One is his efficiency metrics are going to drop in his second year. He only played, 65% of the snaps on the season. So that's like a small sample size. And while we loved the efficiency metrics we saw, we need to see more snaps. And the postseason is going to offer more snaps and more data for us to analyze. So there is a pathway for Rashee Rice to take those next steps because the efficiency metrics are really great for the small work that he has done. But the second part is, I don't think that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to just address it with one piece. We know that it's Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Justin Watson and Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore that all need to be replaced, essentially. I don't think the Chiefs just say, hey, here's one guy who's going to come in and solve our problems. I think there's going to be multiple players, and especially if our concerns are that Travis Kelce drops off. If you go to Fantasy Football Plus Network.com, you'll see my rankings of Travis Kelce be significantly lower than the consensus, is because I think that Travis Kelce does fall even further. He was best ball value tight end 2 this season, but I think he falls even further given what we saw in the second half of the season. And so I think the Chiefs address the wide receiver room with more than just a 20% target share type of wide receiver. I think that they do address it with a second, whether it's 1 in free agency, 2 rookie, or 1 rookie, or whether it's 2 in free agency. But I think that Rashee Rice is a player that I love the efficiency metrics. I think he could be the wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs for 2024. I think that's the most likely outcome. But I think that if you are ignoring the possibility of the Chiefs making a significant move at wide receiver, then you're going to have to live with your depreciation of draft value with Rashee Rice. Many times people taking him in the 3rd, 4th round. I think that's just too early.
Yeah, I like Rashee Rice going into the 3rd, 4th round. I think that he should be a 4th round pick. I'm right there with you on that. The Chiefs are going to have about $32 million in cap going into the offseason, which gives them plenty of room to make a couple of moves for the upcoming season. They have a very young defense. I don't know off the top of my head how many players need to be re-signed on the defense. I think that's something that is going to have to be looked at, but I do think that they do have enough cap room to make a pretty big splash on the wide receiver front and go from there. I wouldn't be surprised to see Travis Kelce take after his brother and just straight up retire after this year either, depending on how they
I don't
finish.
think he will. I don't think he will, but I think he's got one more year after this, and then yes, I think he'll retire. Said I'll go off into the sunset with Taylor Swift, and they'll make their babies and have whatever. Like I'm rooting for this. I know some people are like anti Kelce and Swift, and no, I'm here for all of it.
Who cares? On it,
I'm here for this. It's great. It's fun.
Yeah,
Have
it brings
fun
a
with
whole
this,
new
please.
audience into football, and it grows the game and makes the game bigger. She's obviously a bigger presence than he is. I didn't think we were going to be talking about Taylor Swift tonight. I got to be honest, but
look, this is also maybe the fear is that maybe the fear is not so much, oh, Taylor Swift is ruining our sport. Maybe the fear is Taylor Swift. If Kelce and Swift get married, then that means my girl is going to want to get married to me. You know, the girl that I've been with for years. And now she wants it because it's cool to be married now because Swift and Kelce will get married. And then it's cool to have babies. And I don't know if I want babies. And so it's going to completely shift the entirety of what is cool in America. And I don't know if 25 to 35-year-old men are ready for that at this point, like mentally prepared for that.
Well,
so I think
some of us are good ones. I'm married. I'm 29 years old. I'm married over here. So I must have done something right, but I guess I'm not.
So
cool.
I think that as complete aside, I what if, just hear me out, Calvin Ridley and T. Higgins on the outside, Rashee Rice in the slot.
That definitely changes. I don't know if they'll have that much cap space to make those moves, but I still think you look at a lot of Rashee Rice's targets. They're not going to be down the field targets. He was third in the league in yards after catch. He was, a lot of his routes were shorter routes, and he made a lot of them happen after the catch. So he's still going to get those same targets. He's still going to get those screen passes. He's still going to do that dirty work over the middle of the field like a Julian Edelman did back in the day. But he's more explosive as well. So I think that's what's really keeping Rashee Rice's value is A, his explosion, how explosive he is, and B, that those targets aren't going to go away even if they do bring someone else in on the outside. He's a 95th percentile burst score. So that explosion is what has got him here, and that's not going away anytime soon.
No, he's not going to go away. He's going to have his spike weeks for sure. And I think the best ball value rating, I haven't adjusted for week 18 nor the playoffs yet. So those things do count. Those by the end of the season, they do count toward the best ball value rating. So I will be updating those once we get it in. But a player who, I know we're diving a little bit further down than I said, but it's okay. He's next to Rashee Rice in my rankings, and that's Jayden Reed, who put up an absolute goose egg against the Dallas Cowboys. But I don't know if you saw the splits there, but the reason why Jayden Reed was not as involved is because he wasn't playing as many snaps because the Packers were in 12 personnel. Jake, how concerned are you that Jayden Reed is now a little bit more scheme dependent, given that he plays 75% of his snaps in the slot? Christian Watson was healthy, and Romeo Doubs was out there. Dontavian Wicks was also there. Musgrave and Kraft. How is Jayden Reed going to fit in and mix in here for the Packers, given that some analysts are thinking he's going to be a third and fourth round 2024 pick? I just can't get there. What do you think?
I'm massive draft crush this year on Jayden Reed. I think he's going to take a step forward. I think we're going to start to see a little bit of a decline in production from a guy like Christian Watson. I also think Dontavian Wicks is a guy that needs to be drafted next year and go in those later teen rounds. But I'm not concerned about that game against Dallas at all. What happened versus Dallas was an absolute blowout. It was a dismantling.
It was beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was more than happy to watch it, and I will be more than happy to watch the Packers dominate the Niners this weekend. Heard it here first. But I don't think that
I love it.
They needed Jayden Reed to do anything because of how much the other guys around him were doing. And if you watch the replay of that game on the touchdown to Dontavian Wicks. He had Jaden Reed open across the middle, which would have been a walk-in touchdown as well. He just went to his hot read, which was Dontavian over the middle of the field. So he had opportunities. He was still getting open on plays. Jordan Love just threw it somewhere else, and it happened to work out. So I think if that game was closer, we would have seen a lot more of Jaden Reed. I think they would have tried to get him out on the perimeter. Dallas also has a very, very fast defense. So those jet sweeps with Jaden Reed, those where Jaden Reed excels, those aren't the type of plays that are going to be the best type of plays to run against Dallas. So yeah. I think we'll see a lot more of them this week. And I think Jaden Reed's going to be an absolute smash moving forward.
All right. You heard it here. Jaden Reed. Okay. If you were to put a round on it, where would you draft Jaden Reed?
I'm probably taking Jaden Reed in about the 5th to 6th round. I think that's where he belongs. That's where he should go. And if he's there in the 6th, it's an absolute smash every single time. But I'm also not afraid to reach up into the 5th to take him to make sure that he's still there.
Good, because that's where I have Jaden Reed. I have him at 60. I have him at 62. So at the end of the 5-6 turn, I think is the right spot for Jaden Reed. We're obviously, Jake, we're going to find out when early ADPs come out. And these are obviously very valuable when it comes to finding out information about the consensus and what leverage points we can have with regard to drafting and who can come back to us in our drafts. But the early takes, the early belief is that Jaden Reed is going to be steamed up pretty heavily right away. And I'm hoping and praying that this goose egg drops it down even further, because I like that 5-6 turn spot for Jaden Reed.
Yeah, he's an absolute smash there all day. I'm going to be taking him nearly. If he's there at the 5-6 turn, I'm going to have pretty close to 100% ownership of Jaden Reed this year.
Now, you mentioned Christian Watson, a player that I have just a couple spots ahead of Jaden Reed. He dealt with a lot of injuries this year. Yes, this is all concerning because Jaden Reed had a better best ball value rating. Jaden Reed, let's see, I'm going to pull up the best ball value ratings for Jaden Reed, but they were very close. I believe, yes, Reed had a best ball value rating, wide receiver 28. He was 7.5. And Watson was wide receiver 35 at 6.0. And so obviously Jaden Reed ahead of Christian Watson. But Jaden Reed, 44% of the time, was at least a flex play. 44%. That was better than Garrett Wilson. 44% of the time, Jaden Reed, at least a flex play. We have to scroll all the way down to 21% of the time for Christian Watson. So they were almost the same best ball value rating, but Watson was half of the time as a flex play, which meant that when Watson spiked, he spiked much bigger. And so my take is that I want these guys who can access more ceiling, and Christian Watson, absolute athlete. Like maybe I'm too stupid to quit, but this is the profile of a player that I want lots of. In his rookie season, he put up a top 10, a top 11 yards per route run among all wide receivers, granted with Aaron Rodgers, but Jordan Love was terrible. Jordan Love was arguably one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL for the first half of the season. And that's when most of Christian Watson's damage was being done. Fast forward to the second half of the season, Watson's injured for most of it. That's where Jordan Love is getting hot. He's getting reckless. He's willing to throw the ball down the field. And I think that I want to tie myself to the big playability guy where there wasn't chemistry at the beginning of the season because of the injury, but I think that I want to take shots on if Jordan Love is willing to throw the ball down the field, I want it to be Christian Watson. So that's why I have Watson over Jaden Reed, because I think that he's going to get more playing time and that Love is going to build that chemistry in year 2 as a starter.
See, I don't know if Jaden Reed's the guy you really have to worry about taking snaps away from Christian Watson. The guy I'm thinking that's probably going to be taking away snaps from Christian Watson is Dontavian Wicks. And if you look at a lot of the time that the Packers were in 12 personnel over the past week, Dontavian Wicks was the wide receiver that was out there on the field. Now, Dontavian Wicks had the second highest snap share of any Packer in the last game. Now, granted, obviously Christian Watson coming off an injury, so you do have that. First week back from an injury, but the Packers love Dontavian Wicks. And I think Jordan Love and Wicks have great chemistry on the field. I wouldn't be surprised to see Christian Watson fall down to number 3, number 4 on the depth chart and see Dobbs, Reed, and Wicks taking over those starter snap share.
Ooh, that's spicy. Ooh, that's spicy. But yes, Christian Watson only ran 8 routes in the week in the postseason game against Dallas. It was a game script, blah blah blah. Wicks ran 13 routes. Dobbs ran 16. So Dobbs is certainly the healthiest of these outside wide receivers. I think Christian Watson showed in year 1 that he is the dude, but he's just not been able to get back onto the field. And we both know how conservative the Packers are when it comes to players coming off of injury. They are not willing to risk a lot when it. I'm surprised that they got Jair Alexander out there for the Cowboys.
No,
so certainly a player that I want to be back in on. And if we're getting any discounts on Christian Watson, holy buckets, I am so in on that, because we look at the expert consensus rankings on Christian Watson. It's 83 or 82, 82nd overall on Christian Watson. If that's where he's going, smash. Like end of the 7th round, beginning of the 8th round, holy buckets. Yeah. Give me a guy who can access that type of upside in a Jordan Love offense. Yeah. Tie me to that.
Let me ask you this. Coming into middle of January here, did you ever think you'd be hyping up a Jordan Love offense?
So I was asked probably a dozen times over the offseason, what do you think of Jordan Love? Because evidently I'm the resident Packers fan.
I was going to say, you only got asked a dozen?
Only a dozen on the podcast. But people were like straight playing with me. They wanted to know, what do you think of Jordan Love? And I felt torn. And this was like my honest answer, because some days I would say Jordan Love, terrible. And I went on rants because he was bad. He was certifiably bad. But then there were a couple times where I was said, in this extremely small sample last year, he had one of the highest PFF passing grades. He had one of the highest PFF pass grades among all quarterbacks. I'll pull up the 2022 stats, but in the regular season, he had, let me pull up the passing. Yeah, Jordan Love had a 77 pass grade last season, and among quarterbacks, that was quarterback 9. And now, granted, he only attempted 21 passes, a very, very, very small sample size, but it was so encouraging relative to what we had seen previously, where Jordan Love, his passing, so this was his passing grades. He didn't play a single snap his rookie year. So 0, nothing. His second year, 31 passing grade. This is out of 100. His third year, 77. So he made a big leap. This year in 2023, 82.7 PFF pass grade. Significantly different, and you see the growth.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So for a player like him, especially in the game where he had the most attempts, 83.4 PFF pass grade against Philly week 12 that you mentioned. Jordan Love was a player that I was like, he's probably bad, but at least he gave us some hope. He didn't completely come out of nowhere from 2022. So
I just felt like the Packers were due to have quarterback regression. And now being blessed with 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks back to back, The odds of finding a third. No, I'm not calling Jordan Love a Hall of Famer. Let's pump the
Let's
brakes there.
not put the cart before the
That
horse.
is not what I'm saying.
Did beat Dallas, but pretty handily.
Unless he gets into everyone beats Dallas in the playoffs. That's saying I took my dog for a walk. Everyone does it. That's nothing special. But if he is a Hall of Famer, yeah, sure, then you can say that I said it first. But yeah, I just figured that at some point in time, the Packers were going to miss on a quarterback. And I had a pretty strong feeling it was going to be Jordan Love. I am very happy to be proven wrong.
Yeah, this is definitely one where, but he was proving us right for the first half of the season. But hats off to Matt LaFleur and the coaching staff to elevate Jordan Love, because that's who deserves the credit. It is not, the GM. We knew what Jordan Love was.
I think Aaron Rodgers deserves all the credit for letting Jordan Love sit behind him for 4 years.
Yeah, actually, you know what? To be completely honest, I think that if Jordan Love would have started back in 2021, it would have been an absolute disaster.
Oh, 100%. That game that he played against the Chiefs, it ended 7-3. Now, granted, that was a very, very cold game, and there were obviously different conditions that factored in. And even Patrick Mahomes only put up 7 points on offense. So it's not like he lit up the world and Jordan Love looked like complete garbage. That was our only sample going into this year. There wasn't very much to be happy about.
No, there was not. So that, I think, in the rankings for right now, from what I'm hearing, you would have it Reed, Watson, Wicks, right? And then Dobbs? Or how would you rank these for Green Bay Packers wide receivers?
Yeah, that's probably how I'm go. I'd probably go Reed, I'd probably go Watson, and then Wicks and Dobbs. I'm going to be pretty close again, near 100% on Dontavian Wicks towards the middle half of the later rounds. If he's there in the 14-15 range, that's going to be a smash for me all day long. I think he's going to have tremendous upside, tremendous spike week potential. So especially in best ball drafts where you don't have to worry about starting a lineup, I think he has serious potential to be a absolute steal of a wide receiver in those late rounds.
Yes, I agree with you there. I think that we should be taking a lot of Dontavian Wicks. Well, Jake, this has been a lot of
fun. That I'm on the podcast. No one take Dontavian Wicks. Stay away from him. He's going to be terrible. And just let me draft him so you guys don't have to.
Fair enough. Jake, it's been great having you on, discussing some wide receivers in the top 25 or so. We did dabble slightly outside the top 25, but it's a lot of fun getting with you here talking wide receivers and way too early rankings. Make sure you guys are following Jake on Twitter at Jake Brandt 16. You can follow me on Twitter at FF Stalder. And we'll be doing some ranking summits. There's a lot of other podcasts and content that's coming out on the Fantasy Football Plus network. If you like the content and find it helpful, make sure you guys are subscribing on the channel. And any last words, Jake?
Always a pleasure, Bradley. Thank you so much for having me, man.
All right. Until next time, good luck in the fantasy football streets, everybody.